Judge Miller. Has he gotten on yet?
No. What about we're now live streaming. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our education summit, education workshop on how to advocate for your child once your child is dismissed, suspended, or expelled from school. We are looking for you to this session to educate anyone that is in this situation. We want to make sure that you have the proper tools so that your child can get back into school. This session is being recorded, and you also can see it live on Facebook and our YouTube channel. And before we get started with our session, I wanted to let you know a couple ground rules. You will be able to type your question for our presenters or either on Facebook or on YouTube, and then we will read that question to the presenter. We would like for you to ask who you want your question addressed to, and they will be able to address the question. Now, if there's a question that we cannot answer today, I will my contact information, I will give you that at the end because it is on, since we're going live, I will give you that information at the end of the session. But please be advised, and I hope that you enjoyed the session today. We do have a MC, which is Cynthia Evans, and she will be our MC today, and she will introduce our speakers, tell a little bit about them and what they will be talking about. And also, I wanted to make sure that you would write down your question, so your question can be answered. So make sure that and take good notes. That way you'll have a sense of what you need to do when you need to do it. And also we'll have my contact. I will send my contact information out. Okay, Cynthia, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. I hope I didn't miss anything. So
I don't think so. Good morning, everyone. I am honored to have three wonderful speakers who are going to work with us. Steve Balco, Magistrate Miller, and Mrs. Kelly Marshall. And each of them come to us with different expertise on this subject. And so we as the NAACP are just honored that they would give their time and talents to help educate us. I'm going to start the presentation discussing with Mr. Steve Balco from the Department of Education. Steve serves as the Director of School Buildings, Physical Security, and Safety with the Department of Ed. In his role, Steve oversees the Indiana School Safety Specialist Academy, conduct school visits, and provide technical assistance on school safety and school safety planning for all schools in the state. Steve previously has served as the Assistant Director of Indiana University Emergency Management and Continuous in Bloomington campus, where he worked with universities and community partners to develop policy, strategies, plan, and capacities across the scope of emergency management and continuity. Steve graduated from Indiana University, Purdue University in Indianapolis with a BS in criminal justice and a master's in criminal justice and public safety. With that said, Steve, you are presenting. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia, and good morning. I am very glad to be here. And so what I wanted to do is kind of take a step back. I know we had talked about advocating for your child, after the exclusionary discipline process has started. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about what we could do sort of on the front end before that happens, some questions to ask, some resources that might be made available to you as well. And always with the caveat, each school will kind of address their discipline policies a little differently, maybe than their neighboring policies, and what those procedures may or may not look like. But I think what we're going to talk about now is really going to apply no matter what that process looks like in your particular school. And so, we really like to say, the day you go in to sign up your child, enroll them in school for that year, ask about the code of conduct, ask about where that handbook can be found. A lot of times now it's online, but you really want to know what's in that handbook at the beginning of the year, know what that code of conduct is, and then also what those particular discipline points are that are assigned to violations of that code of conduct. That way, at the very beginning of the year, you sort of just have that level set baseline, you know what's going to be there and what's not. Occasionally, what we will find is that there is a discrepancy between the rules of school and the rules of the home. And so making sure that you are clear and understanding that, what may be permissible at home might not be permissible in the school, and that when you're at school, those are going to be the rules that you need to follow, and to be able to have that understanding ahead of time so that you're not having sort of those miscommunications right off the bat. Additionally, we know that it's certainly not always possible to attend each one of those open houses or gatherings or events that they have at the school for a variety of reasons, whether it's work or childcare or just simply unavailable to attend on that given day. But a lot of times at those open houses, they will talk about discipline policies and code of conduct and expectations. So we always say, even if you can't make it, engage with the school leadership, whether that's a dean of students, a counselor, or principal. Maybe ask them via phone call or email. What information was covered during those open houses? See if there's a way that you could pick up a packet of information or receive that via an email or have it explained to you over a phone call. So that way you're still always continuing to get that information, whether or not you can physically attend in person or on a webinar like we are today, but being able to really dive in and understand and engage in that process. Another thing, sort of ahead of any discipline being applied and just conversations that we've had with schools and visiting is that, if you're starting to notice that there might be a behavior shift or even if it's not a behavior shift, but maybe a tension growing between your student and the school, we've seen some parents have success by reaching out to the school and asking if they can get some sort of regular update on their student and what's being seen in the building. So whether that's, every Friday, there's a phone call sent and said, hey, this was a good week, or here's some of the issues we are seeing. This really works well for any age of a student. So that way the parent can engage with what they're seeing in the school, because it might not be the same thing that you're seeing or experiencing at home. And so that way, those regular updates, you can start to see the patterns and work with that school on any other types of interventions that might be able to be done at home versus at the school, and be able to really stem off any major issues that might arise through there. And those are just a couple of ideas and things that we've seen that we think really help start the communication process on the front end. And then next week, you kind of talk about, well, what happens once that process begins, whether, that discipline is starting to be applied, or you're starting to review that and having the meetings with the school leadership. One thing we always encourage parents to do is ask for that process in writing for how that's going to be dealt with. So an incident occurs and, you can engage with the school and say, we, certainly understand that this is going to begin, whether or not you necessarily maybe agree with the discipline that's going to be provided on the front end, but you definitely want to still understand the process and the steps that are going to be taken. So that way you can walk through each of those steps and be prepared to address each of those steps in the process as they come up. Another thing that we're really starting to see across the state and really across the country are alternative programs to suspension and expulsion. So whether that is restorative circles, whether that is some school-based community service, or another option that might exist there, we're starting to see more and more of those. So it might be, wise to ask, I certainly understand we're going to go down this road, but how do we best protect the academic needs of our student as well? And so maybe there's an alternative to that exclusionary discipline that exists within the school or could be developed for that student to keep them on their academic path, but also, show that there was maybe an infraction that occurred of the school rule, and it can be dealt with that way. There might be certain circumstances where that is just not feasible, but it's always important to ask and engage that process. And if it doesn't exist, there might be some way that a school could work with a family or a student to develop that process moving forward. And so then as you still continue to progress down that road and your student is going to be removed from the school building for any period of time, one of the things we like to encourage, or I like to encourage, is to ask if there's a way to keep earning credits. Is there an alternative school or an alternative education program that's available? Is there a program that could be developed for your student where they might be able to complete at least one or two of those classes, get enrolled in summer school, and at least lay out what that path looks like to continuing to earn those credits towards graduating on time? We don't want to say, we're going to stop educating the child school to see what processes could be there as well. And then once a student is removed, I think it's important to also start talking about what does that return to school look like. So if the student's removed and you're focusing on getting the student back into school while also retaining the credits, we also want to talk about, if a student is expelled for a year or suspended for several months, that has a major impact not only on the student's academic process, but could also have an impact on their psyche and their ability to focus and adequately kind of re-enter that school building or that school day system, because they've become accustomed to another, day to day. And so also talking about how do we return that student back to the classroom? Work with the school on, are there any other supports that can be provided to this student as they're returning back into the school? I know that there is always a certain stigma that is associated with being removed from school via suspension or expulsion. And so are there any supports both academically to make sure that we're staying on the academic path, but also otherwise to make sure that that student is integrating back, socially and emotionally, or back into just the flow and the routine of the school day, trying to prevent any further disciplinary issues that might arise. So you don't really want to add to the stress of returning to school already. You want to be able to prepare that student to really hit the ground running on that. And then once the return happens, is kind of starting back over at the kind of the top of the list where we talk about continuing to engage in the process, regular follow-ups, and really just thinking about how do we engage with the school to make sure that these problems aren't necessarily surprises, because I think that a lot of times the first time we see conversations, or sometimes when we first see conversations, is when an issue arises. And so we want to make sure that we're engaging and being equal partners in that conversation really up front. So that's really the kind of the process that I like to walk parents through when they call us asking for assistance on that. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, Cynthia, or move on to the next individual.
Thank you. Our next presenter, we're going to try to hold our questions to the end of our session so we can get through all of our presenters. And welcome, Magistrate Miller. Our next presenter is Mrs. Kelly Marshall. Mrs. Kelly Marshall is the Senior Vice President of Schools, leading a team in executing the Mind Trust School Incubation, School Support, and Talent Strategies that support the growth and ongoing success of high-quality schools for Indianapolis students. She also partners with educational organizations like Relay Graduate School of Education and instructional partners, as well as other system-level strategies to help ensure every Indianapolis student has access to high-quality education. Mrs. Marshall began her career as a teacher in Indianapolis public schools and went on to serve in different capacities, such as instructional coach, a principal, assistant principal, and principal. She transitioned from IPS to go and work with the charter section of Indianapolis schools. She took Indianapolis Lighthouse Academy from a low performing schools to one that received an A in the state accountability system. She went on to find Tinsley Collegiate Academy, the state first all-girl charter schools, and she became the highest performing middle school. It became the highest performing middle school in Indianapolis. She, has earned a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Indiana University and her master's degree from Butler University. So welcome, Mrs. Marshall. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think whenever I hear that bio, I'm like, everybody can just stop and say, I'm a seasoned educator, right? Seasoned educator.
Seasoned educator, yes.
Seasoned educator of over 30 years. And thank you so much for that intro. And absolutely, all of those things are true, but I'm first a parent.
Great.
And I am happy to say that each time that I have been overseeing a school, I've been able to have my own children in that school district.
Okay.
When we come to a topic of educating yourself on how to advocate for your child, Steve hit on a lot of the parts. I want to
Yes.
go even deeper and say that there are 4 things that parents need to know. And I'm going to share my screen just for a couple slides because the first thing is very important. Let's see if I can get this working. Let's see, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. The first is parents need to know the data, and not just the data of their children's school, but just the overall state data. After this, I'm going to share a couple slides. In fact, let me just jump to that now. We know that we're recovering from a pandemic, and we like to, I'm hearing a lot of people say, well, it was learning loss. It was learning loss. No, it was content like omission. Children still had the capabilities of learning, and they learned a lot. They learned how to maneuver through Google Sheets. They learned how to avoid work. They learned what not to do. So when people say that this pandemic is causing scores to just be as dismal as ever, I want to make sure that we understand that although fewer than 30% of students in the state of Indiana in grades 3 through 8 perform proficient on iLearn, 8.1% of Black students demonstrated proficiency. 8.1. There has been an achievement gap long before the pandemic. And we need to make sure as parents that we understand that. I have committed my entire career in servicing students that are denied access and opportunity, and it's most often those students of color. And this type of data, as a parent, we have to know, because that should fuel you enough to go into that building and ask all those questions that Steve was talking about. Because it's not just about the school. We are in a system right now that is not prioritizing the academics of our children. Now, the next thing, well, I got just another slide I want to show here. And if our viewers and our panelists here can just take a look and note if any of those counties resonate with you. These are the top 10 school corporations with the largest gaps between Black and Hispanic students and white students in both race and income. So parents need to know the data. They need to know where they live before it even gets to the school level. Next, Steve had touched upon this, knowing the academic and culture models and policies of the school. There are a lot of schools out here that are doing amazing things, and they are doing their very best to keep parents engaged. But there are far too many whose academic models are weak. Their coaching for teachers is weak. And that is then transferring into teachers who have an inability to manage a classroom, which then results in students getting put out of school. At Tinley Collegiate, I think, Cynthia, I heard you mention the the success that we had at Tinley.
Yes.
Now, the gap, our suspension rates were out of the roof, just out of the roof. There was a model that I had walked into that required so much time on the back end, because what parents need to know is unless a child is expelled, the school is still responsible for delivering instruction. So when I walked into a model, a school model that I'm not going to say prioritize suspension, but I'll say they accepted suspension. What no one was saying is how much work that was going to require of me as the school leader to get and encourage those teachers to work after hours to make that time up. We had a building of over 350 girls that continued to produce, but it wasn't because of me. It was because it wasn't because of the model of school that I walked into or district I walked into. It was because I had the teacher buy-in to go behind those suspensions and meet with students after school on Saturday and be as resilient and nimble as they could. And parents knew that they could walk in that building and say, okay, well, my child's going to be out. When will they get the instruction? When will they get it? Because they're entitled to it. The third is know every adult that is surrounding your child, because for 8 hours a day, those adults are your children's parents. Most often, when parents go to back to school nights or open houses, they see the lead teacher. But then there are times they come home and that suspension happened in gym, or that suspension happened in the hallway. So a parent has a right to know every adult that is going to engage with their child on a daily basis. And the final thing is know who the other parents are in the building. If a school does not have a strong initiative, I don't want to hear low parent engagement. I want to hear a strong initiative to engage parents. Parents need to know who the parents are and how to access them, because a school should always remain in service to the parents and students that they serve. And if they don't, if the school has not prioritized an opportunity to elevate student voice, then parents are at a loss coming in. So I hope those are the 4 things that resonate with a lot of our callers, and I'll be excited to take any questions following this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you very much. Our third speaker is Mr. Jeffrey Miller. He is an attorney in Lake County Supreme Court. Mr. Miller is a magistrate. He has over 30 years of professional legal experience, all within Lake County, Indiana. Excuse me. He has held his magistrate position for 28 years there, and he has also served as a deputy prosecutor in the Lake County Prosecutor's Office in Crown Point, Indiana. Attorney or Magistrate Miller was born and raised in Gary, Indiana. He also attended Valpo University and obtained a Bachelor's of Art degree in sociology and concentrated in criminal justice and political science. He went on to obtain his law degree from Akron School of Law. And excuse me, and he began his legal career as a deputy prosecutor again in Lake County Prosecutor's Office in 1991. Magistrate Miller represents the state of Indiana and worked to prosecute defendants in criminal litigations. After almost 2 years in that position, he was appointed as the magistrate in the Lake County Superior Court Juvenile Division. He also has held this position, as I said earlier, proudly for over 28 years. He presided over cases dedicating to ensuring the safety and wellness of children and families of the citizens of Lake County, Indiana. My voice is gone this morning, I'm sorry. He has presided over cases that help dealt with adoptions, guardianships, chins, delinquency involving children and families. He is a member of the National Bar Association, the Indiana State Bar Association, Lake County Bar Association, James Kilbro Bar Association. He's a member of the NAACP, National Council of Juvenile and Family Courts Judges. Magistrate Miller currently serves on the board of the Indiana Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges and was previously appointed by the Indiana Supreme Court to serve on the Indiana Juvenile Judge Bench Book Committee and the Indiana CASA Advisory Board. Welcome and thank you for agreeing to be a presenter this morning.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The problem that I have is the first two speakers are so good, I don't know what to say anymore. They took they took all my steam away from me and everything I had to say. So in Lake County and in the school systems, we have over 13, 14 different school systems in our county. And what I see and what we see here a lot in regards to the school and education of our children is that the rules apply differently from every school corporation. And that seems to be a issue. So I think the first gentleman got it correct. First day of school, get your handbook from the school, know what the rules are, know what you can and cannot do. Can your child have a cell phone? Can your child have this? Can your child have that? Because if you don't know the rules and the due process that's supposed to be applied for your child, that's when things get out of control. And now you're on the back end trying to solve a problem that could have been solved in August when school first started. The courts, unfortunately, we do not do quote unquote expulsions and things like that. Most of our cases come to the courts when it's a truancy issue or the child is already in the process of being expelled. And what the court is trying to do at that point is trying to find a way to ensure that the child still gets his education in light of the fact that the school is trying to dismiss the child. Now, the biggest issues that I see from the court's perspective is a lot of times the due process is extremely slow in the school for whatever reason. You know, your child gets in trouble in August, they're not trying to have an expulsion hearing to May of the following year. And, you know, when it gets to the court, we're going, well, what happened? What happened in August that now you don't have a hearing till November, December, which is, we all know, holiday season, and no one is really going to do anything because we're going on break. And then you're coming back to the school in January, February, and your child is still looking at expulsions. I see often children are being kind of pending expulsion is the term that they use. And so it's kind of like they're not in the school, but we still got to give you some work via Zoom or whatever to kind of keep you going. Well, you have, you know, in our community, we have a lot of single parents that have to work and they can't focus on the school setting and making sure that their child is attending school as they should be. So the one thing that I would say is obviously get your understanding of what your rights are, know the handbook, the due process system, make sure you get due process, you get your letters, parents be vigilant, open up the letters that you get from the school, because a lot of times the school will say, Judge, we sent letters out to that family and they never responded. And, you know, so you got to make sure as parents you respond, you be vigilant in regards to your children and their situation. A lot of the issues that we receive are the disciplinary actions of fights and things of that nature, where the child is being brought in as a delinquent for a fight. And that's when you find out he's also up for expulsion. And I think the gentleman said it best. look for alternatives to expulsion, alternative schools. The courts, we have alternative schools that we can send our children to that go through the system that could help in regards to alleviating that exposure, because you don't want that expulsion on your record, because that follows you. You move to one community to the next. That other community, once they get to school records, want to know, why are you coming here? And like I said, we have like 13, 14 different school corporations in Lake County. They want to know, well, why are you coming over here? Well, I got an expulsion from my other school. That school is already on notice, like, well, we don't want you. Were you a problem? Why would we want to let you into our school system? So there's a lot of things that you need to do to try to make sure that expulsion doesn't get on your child's record, to make sure that you don't have any further problems down the road. But a lot of it is truancy, a lot of it is discipline. And like I said, I think you need to really focus on getting it done in the beginning, so it doesn't get to the point where the expulsion happens at the end. But a lot of the court system is always here to help, to make sure that, we can do everything. Because, let's be honest here. The only reason that I'm here and I had this position is because of education. And there's no other reason. I didn't have 5 brothers that could sing like the Jackson 5, and we didn't have that. So, education is key. I believe in it. I know that's the only way that one of the not the only way, one of the ways that you succeed is through your education. And I think the schools also need to focus on different ways of educating our children. Not everyone can do the come to the school at 8:30, leave at 4 situation. So we have to find out different ways to educate our children, to reach our children. Unfortunately, I graduated in the stone age of, sit down, sit in your classroom, do your work, go home at 3:30. The kids now think differently. We didn't have internet and FaceTime and Facebooks and all that type of stuff. So you need to engage them in different ways and educate children in different ways. So I think that's more, we need to really focus on that and getting our children to a point of educating them where they have the understanding of and enjoy being educated. Well, any questions afterwards, I greatly would answer them. But thank you so much for having me here, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing today.
I would like any of the 3 presenters to please talk about, I get this question a lot, and we're seeing a lot, kids who have gun charges outside of school, or not, parents are not aware that if they create a safety issue in the community by having a gun or shoot someone, they could be expelled or will be expelled from school, and that's part of a school law. Speak to that, and helping parents understand when they feel the school has not given them fair due process, what steps to take to contact the Department of Ed or other avenues to help them understand. Could any of you address that, please?
Well, I can talk about the gun violence and situations like that, because unfortunately, I have a couple cases on the books now where, the children had guns getting off the buses in the neighborhood. A lot of it stems from the schools try to incorporate, well, this was a school setting, this was school environment, even though it wasn't on the school grounds per se. They extended to, well, they were going home from school and things like that. And they try to use that as a backdrop to the expulsion process. Now, fortunately, when we get involved in that type of situation, we try to work with the school and try to figure out a way to still get the child the education. Like I said, we still try to make sure that the child is being educated, even if not through, quote unquote, the schools, through the course, through alternative programs of education and things of that nature. Even if a child is at the juvenile center and they have to reside there until their next hearing or the parent comes, we still have education in our system where they can get educated through that way. So education is always key and foremost. But the gun situation is it is being extended to, if they can make a nexus that this was kind of with the school or on the school grounds or during the school dance or something like that, or leaving from the school, football game, they will try to use that as an extension to the expulsion process. But the courts really just deals with it from the standpoint of, did the child have the gun, not the expulsion, and if they do get the expulsion, then we continue to try to work with them on the educational end. But we try to advocate on the front end and say, hey, can we at least work something out where they don't have to be expelled?
Thank you.
And excuse me, Cynthia, to kind of tackle maybe a little bit of that second part of that question, and understanding kind of the department's role at times in these issues is going to vary case by case and circumstance by circumstance, correct? And so, without context of what's going on, a parent is always welcome to reach out to our office or call the department. We can start to begin to understand the facts as what's going on and what process and what steps were taken, and then work with that family to engage in that process. At least get them pointed in the right direction. If it's not something that the department can address due to the local discipline policies, we can get them pointed into the right direction on questions asked, next steps that they can take, alternatives that they can seek, and then how to work and navigate, from that local school building up through the school corporation office, to the school boards, and then to, finding out if any procedures or policies were violated as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think the only thing I would add is that when my understanding of the law is that, and Magistrate Miller, you can definitely help me with this, but my understanding is that from the time a child is dismissed until they walk through the threshold of their door or are released to a parent, they are the responsibility of the school. So in the event that a child is dismissed from school and the action occurs with the weapon or whatever en route home, that's really the only authority that a school would have. If there is something that happens, and it always on the weekend, always happens on a weekend, unless the child is posing a threat to the students within that building, a school really should not ethically be able to hold that against them, because they're not in their purview at that point. And I may be misinterpreting it, but I think that a school, at least from my understanding, a school has more authority in making that type of decision to administer any type of consequence in the event that the child is dismissed from school and before they reach or cross the threshold of their door.
And you're excuse me, I didn't mean to jump in there, but you're absolutely correct. That is the interpretation of it. But the schools, and you have to be cognizant of the school's position on this too. Their position is, well, when you did that on the weekend, you weren't under our purview, but we're worried about you bringing it into the school building on Monday, even though that did happen on Saturday night, things like that. So some of the schools here try to get information about the child's history, which they should not have. It's records are sealed, just juvenile court, you don't do that. But the school's position, and I don't want to speak for every school, but a lot of it, I've had conversations with them and they say, well, we're afraid of what happened on Saturday night boils over to us Monday morning, because there was a fight at a party that the school had nothing to do with, but so we wouldn't want to know what happened Saturday night so we can be prepared for Monday morning. And I'm a parent, like you say, and my kids went through the Gary's public school system, and as a parent, I do want to know who had that fight on Saturday night, and was it weapons involved and things like that as a parent. So I got to worry about when my child comes to school Monday morning, is something going to happen? So it's a fine line, but you're absolutely right. The law is that, and when they reach the threshold, when they step through the door, it's kind of not the school's responsibility anymore. And they should not be using something that happened Saturday night in order to use it as an expulsion come Monday morning.
Unless it's in their board-approved handbook. Am I correct, Mr. Balco?
That would be correct. If that was in their policy and in their handbook, then that would be what they would
That's
call
what I see. Know that parents don't always know and read when they're reading their handbooks.
And that's why you should read that handbook when you
That's
get.
correct.
That's exactly why, because you need to know what's our rules, what's my due process, how do I fight this if something happens.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it amazes me that, you know, in court, parents can quote me all the law in the world and never went to law school. But when I ask them, have you checked on your child's attendance? Do you know your child's teachers? They look at me like I got an eye in the middle of my head. I said, you can quote all this law to me, but you don't know who your child's teacher is for first hour? You never met him? You don't know, who their math teacher is? You never met him? Not that, I was a great parenting thing, but the young lady is correct. On the first day of school, and the gentleman's correct, on the first day of school, you go down that hall with your child and next to you and go, this one here, that one mine. You got a problem, here's my phone number. You go to the second hour teacher, this one right here, that one mine. You got a problem, give me a phone call. We're going to solve this at the beginning. And you do that every year from first grade to 12th grade. And my kids will go, Dad, why you going in here and I'm a senior? I'm like, because I need to know who teaching you, what's going on, and they need to know when they got a problem, give me a call. Don't wait till November, December and telling me, well, your child been messing up all year. I'm like, well, why you ain't calling me in August when he was messing up? So I'm sorry, I don't mean to get into that, but our kids, we got to protect them. We got to do right by them.
I agree with that. I did the same thing with my child. I went there. He's 26 years old now. I went to the school saying, hey, if there's an issue, I need to know. Don't wait, after the report card has come to my house or after he had brought the report card home. I need to know that first F, and or whatever that grade is, that is not, he played sports. You have to have a certain grade level. Well, my level was a little higher than the school. So, but my question is the process. I want to go back to the process. Parents are not reading. If they're not reading that handbook like they should be reading that handbook, now everything is online. Have a lot of parents in my community that don't have access to a computer because of social, wherever it may be. They don't have access to that computer. The school should provide them a hard copy. Am I correct?
Correct.
And I had a situation where it's all online. The teacher says it's online. It's online. Well, if they don't have access to that information, then they're putting that child in jeopardy. Because the parent does not have those rules in writing. So my question is, if the school is not willing to provide that information to that parent, what are the next steps? Because I've had a situation like that. I have pulled the code of conduct for a parent and printed it for a parent for them to go through it. They don't have them sign anything anymore. It used to be, I know when my kid came home from school, I had a stack of papers this high. It's like, do I have to read all these tonight? They said you have to, read them and return them. So I try to get through them every night. But, the code of conduct, I waited on making sure that I understood everything because I'm an educator also. My kids, they're the college kids, they talk back. So, but still educator, just making sure that you're aware of everything is in that code of conduct and then send it back. They don't have them sign anything anymore. Everything is online. So how do we know that the parents getting this information if they say, oh, it's online? How do we know this? I mean, I don't know, where, like I said, they don't always come to us. They always, they come to the NAACP pretty much when their kid is on that has been expelled or dismissed from school. So how
already left the building when they get to you.
Huh?
the train has already left the building when they get to you.
Yes.
Yes. And when we
Two trains have gone.
Right. And they missed them both. Right. I only thing I could suggest, and what we try to do with our people that come through the court system is, it's unfortunate, but we have our probation officer go up there and get it for them, or we print it for them, things like that. But you're right. A lot of people don't have computers and any access to print off the code of conduct. Now, the signing of, you're right. We used to sign ours too, but fortunately, my youngest, he's off at Howard right now, so I don't have to do the code of conduct anymore. So I don't know what they do about that, to be honest with you. I don't know how you can enforce something that I never signed and you don't have any proof that I knew about it. Because I knew they used to pull it out and go, hey, Magistrate Miller, Judge Miller, here, you signed this, so we said this was the rule. So I don't know how they do it now. Maybe the other people know better than I do in regards to that issue.
Parents have got to know the governance structure. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be at the board level. I know charters respond also to an authorizer, but a parent's first step in the event that they can't get satisfaction from the school, or if they have questions that aren't being answered, would be at that board level. I know parents a lot of times like to jump straight to the state, right? Or to you all, straight to the NAACP, but they have to understand the board structure. And again, the thing is, it's all within that parent handbook, right? So it's just parents have to come out the blocks knowing that they are entitled and have a right to the student parent handbook. And as soon as you've enrolled your child, or even if it's just they've matriculated into the next grade, walk in, I need a copy of the most revised handbook. And they can say that everything's online, but there's nothing stopping a parent from walking up to that building. The other thing, we keep talking a lot about communication. Because of whatever circumstances, parents are either without a phone or the phone consistently changes. The biggest concern that I was getting from parents, and they were talking about the communication, and then you go back to the log and you see that there were multiple attempts to try to reach the parent, and either the address or the phone has changed. So you've got to make sure that your school knows exactly how to reach you and the best way to reach you. I've heard so many times from parents, well, I'm at work, you can't call me at work. Sir, ma'am, if I need you, I need you, and I'm not trying to create a situation for you, but parents also have got to understand that communication has got to go both ways.
And Kelly, I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of the calls that we receive on understanding the governance structure. In that, a lot of times there's a discipline issue occurring, and I'll receive a phone call and they say, well, we've spoke with the dean of students. And that was sort of the termination of that communication piece. And so it's like taking a step back almost and trying to inform the process and say, okay, well, after you spoke with this person, now let's talk to the principal, then work your way up to a central office person. And if you're still not getting satisfaction or an understanding of where you are, then go to your school board. And once you've exhausted those local options, then we might be able to advise a little bit more on that process. But I think you're absolutely right in that working within that local structure where all the policies are hopefully aligned and work together is really going to be the best avenue to begin that.
So I want to make sure that I can tell one parent that I had a concern. So talk with teacher, dean of students, or counselor. No satisfaction there. Principal. After the principal, the school board. From the school board to Department of Ed.
And then based on whatever the circumstances are, I mean, we may not be able to come in with, the ability to wipe everything clean or resolve it or encourage it. But I think that we could then start to have conversations about where you are in the process of what those next steps could look like based on those unique circumstances of, whatever's at play.
And that information is spelled out and should be spelled out in each school's handbook. Should be, okay.
Absolutely.
Because some parents want to go directly to, they try to go to the principal and then they go, they want to go to school board, but school board is, our school board in our area, it's structured. You only have so many minutes for public comments and things like that. Because they say they have a packed agenda.
Mm-hmm.
But time they get on the school board, the problem has escalated.
Mm-hmm.
So then they want to go directly, to the Department of Ed. So, and I don't know whether the Department of Ed can help. And by that time, the kid has been out of school for so long, they have missed so much. My concern is also when the student is dismissed or expelled from school, should not alternative education be offered right then, saying, hey, Johnny is out of school for a month. Okay, Johnny needs to do some work while he's out of school. So these are the options that we're giving him. That's not always the case. So is this where the parent needs to come in and say, hey, what's his alternative for him to get his education? Is that up to the parent or is that up to the school?
In my experience, that varies from district to district, to corner of the state to corner of the state. Some schools have very formal procedures in place to address that. Some others I've seen where it is created on the fly for the unique, not on the fly, but for the unique needs of that particular student and how they can work with them. So I think that's just one of those pieces of that ongoing dialogue. So once you realize you might be going down this road with the disciplinary process, start asking, one, if there's alternatives to that exclusionary discipline up front, and then two, if that's still going to be applied, then what does that look like for continuing to try to earn credits so that you don't fall a semester or a year behind on your path to graduating.
Okay. Thank you.
Deborah, I just wanted to also add that in the event that a child is attending a charter school, they have the option also prior to going to the state to the school's authorizer. So whoever the authorizing authority is, be it the mayor's office, Ball State, I know Trine. So finding out if they have an authorizer as well. But in terms of anytime a child is facing a consequence, I think one of our other speakers said this earlier, parents should receive everything in writing. In the event that a parent has not received something in writing, and I believe it's within 10 days, a parent has a lot of rights at that point. There were, on more times than not, as a school superintendent, I have had to tell school leaders, you didn't follow the process. You missed 10 days. That baby's coming right back. Make it work.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was saying about the due process with the system. A lot of times when they get to us, like I said, a child is pending expulsion, and they're pending expulsion for weeks, for months, and we're going, what do you mean pending expulsion? What is that? And that was, I was saying, that the due process of, you didn't get a letter, and the young lady's correct. We got to keep up with our addresses too. That's the court's biggest problem. Is everybody's phone number changes every 5 minutes, and they move every 5 minutes because of economic reasons. Let's be honest about it. They lose housing because of money, or they had a landlord that wasn't good. So there's reasons for the moves. No one is moving just to move. But you also got that due process piece where a child is pending expulsion. Now, when it gets to the court, obviously we try to help and get them into some type of alternative program pending that expulsion. But the parents should be jumping up and down and letting the child stay at home for 2 months pending expulsion. I just never got that. What does pending expulsion mean? Am I expelled or am I not expelled? Do I get a hearing? Don't I get a hearing? And that happens often. And it's different schools. And like I said, we're dealing with 13, 14 in Lake County alone. You go to one school system, they get it done in 5 minutes. You go to another school system in the same county, it takes 5 months. So be aware of that. That's why you need that handbook. That's why you need to know what my rights are. What are you guys supposed to be doing? Not to be, mean about anything, but just know your rights. Understand what's going on to protect your child.
I had a child that the parents did get the information correctly. I mean, they did call, they did send the letter certified. Actually, they sent 2 letters certified, but the letter was incomplete. They said the child, they let the child back in school, but they didn't give a date. So the child was coming, parent was taking the child back to school the next day, but no one could accept the child. So in that case, they have, we had some issues. So hopefully we'll have that resolved on Monday. So, but when you don't give a date on when to say the child can come back to school, sent that letter and said the child can come back to school. Parent takes the child to school, but the child's not let in school. That's a breakdown of communication there, because there was no date on the letter that said the child could come back to school. So in that case, so she had to take the child back home because, this person didn't have that information, or this person, well, we didn't know anything about it. She shows them the letter saying the child can come back to school, but there's no date on the letter. I mean, there's no date saying when the child can come back. They said the child could come back. So assuming that when she received the letter, okay, this child's going back to school, because he's already lost learning. So, so there, there's some issues there. So, and I know that, communication can be, crossed or that. But my thing is, shouldn't I have accepted that child back into school when the parent had a certified letter saying the child can come back to school? But I guess no one else knew the child could come back to school. So when she brought the child back to school, they said he could not come back to school. So, I mean, we gotta, that was definitely a breakdown in communication somewhere. So we're just trying to, what is the parent steps? What's the next steps? Can someone address that?
I think the first question I would have is, who said that they couldn't come back? Who did the letter come from? Who was it addressed from? And who said that they couldn't come back? Because as a parent, they shouldn't have left that day without finding out who was the decision maker, and then who do I go to? And I think even when that child is back in, that needs to be elevated up to the board level, because they've got to make sure, because that's systemic, right? We don't know if it was an intentional or if it was an error, inadvertently an error, right? But it's who did the letter come from? And then who was the individual that did not allow that child back in? Because if the parent received notification that the child was to return and there is a lack of clarity on when, then they absolutely have at least, I won't say an argument, but they've definitely opened up the conversation.
Oh, yes, definitely. Okay.
Mrs. Vance, I look like we have 2 questions in chat. Am I correct?
I am so sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I forgot all about the chat.
That's all
I'm
right.
sorry, guys. Let me go to the chat. Okay, here. I do not see them in my chat.
On our screen, I just see 2. Can't see what it is. Okay.
John, can you see any questions in the chat?
There are no questions in the Facebook chat or the YouTube chat.
Okay, those 2 questions were my contact information. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I was like, oh man, I just omitted the chat. Sorry about that, guys. And there are no questions. Do we have any questions? Barbara, do you have any questions or Sadie, do you have any questions? Sadie has joined us. She is our political action chair. And we were just talking about school discipline.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am enjoying what I'm just walking in on. Certainly, yes, talking about the conversation with the kids and suspending and whatnot. I am enjoying what I'm just walking in on. Certainly, yes, talking about the conversation with the kids and suspending. Just walking in the conversation with the kids and
Okay, you are like in a tunnel. You're on two devices. You are like in a tunnel. You're on two devices. Now you're on mute. We'll come back to Sadie. Anyway, now you're on mute. And I think mine is a delay. Yeah, it is. Now you're on mute. And I think mine is a delay. Now you're on mute. Mine is a delay. Cynthia, do you have any more questions?
The one thing that I see a lot of, and all of us on this panel, the number of all the students who use social media. They believe that they have the right to print anything on social media and make threats against other students or the school. And that is a danger as threatening to bring a weapon to school. Could one of you address that issue, please, to the public? On your rights with social media.
From the court's perspective, and man, that this has become a real issue with the threats over social media.
Yes.
Not just towards other students, but towards the school. The shooting ups of the schools and the things like that is becoming rampant. And honestly, you can't do it, students. You just can't do it. I mean, it is the hot topic now in regards of disciplining your child, removing your child from the school environment, and trying to incarcerate our young people. I mean, it's the the handgun situation, yeah. But you threaten a school, and here in Lake County, we've had situations where the SWAT teams were brought out and they were through. It's like it is unbelievable. And then the reaction from the school and from the parents and from the administrators and the community is just
Taken serious.
don't do that. Don't do it. There's no defense for it. I mean, it's from my phone. I said it. What else can I do? And then they're saying, hey, you gotta go. We can't have you here. Now, obviously, you had those situations where the kid had no access to a weapon, he didn't own a weapon, or, anything like that. But they already like, hey, you could get one. So please don't do that. Please don't. It's just you're for sure to be expelled. I mean, there's just no way around it. I mean, there's no way around it. From what I see from the courts. Now, I don't know about the other young people doing that's here on the panel today, but that's how it is with the courts. They when a case gets to us, it's a criminal case. It's already, for lack of a better term, a delinquency case for the juvenile. So now we're just trying to figure out a way to, get you help. Why did you say that? Why did you feel that? Was somebody threatening you? Was someone bothering you? Did you feel, some emotional reasons why you did it. We're trying to solve that issue, but the issue of you going back to school is pretty much already, the handwriting's on the wall from the school's perspective. Let me put it that way.
Excuse me. Oh, no, go ahead, Kelly.
No, I would agree. At that point, the student has presented intent to harm. And even if it's just a matter of it impacting a school's branding, right? Because they don't want their students out there, in representing a negative image of the school. But as Magistrate Miller said, if it's important to their office, you can bet that it's going to warrant at the school level some time away, just even if it's for investigation. If it doesn't warrant an immediate expulsion, it gives the school enough right, I'm going to say, to then eliminate that child's access to after school activities or even during the day. Now, I'm going to also go back to say, though, because Steve said it earlier, protecting the academics, right? Depending upon each school, they could elect to then still extend opportunities and access to the content and instruction in a differing way. But to Magistrate Miller's point, it's a wrap at that point.
And just to sort of piggyback on, but also shift a little bit. And I think one thing that, when I talk with parents, one thing we try to encourage is really having an understanding of what's on your child's device, what's on their phone, what's on their iPad, how are they using it as a parent, keeping an eye on that, because, we're sort of talking about the school threats, the big shooting threats, those types of things. Well, frankly, what I hear more of are individuals who have a beef or tension with one another that spills over into a larger, almost a fist fight, or something that then occurs at school, or something arises at school between interpersonal conflict that then spills over into the community at home. And so I think that one thing we always try to say is not just the sort of large headline grabbing threats that you see, but are also those things that can be controlled by knowing what's on that child's device, knowing what apps they're using, what kind of content they're sending to one another. So that way maybe you can kind of stem that off prior to. Now I also know that our students are always about 3 steps ahead, I think, of the adults in the technology world. But really having that conversation and maybe, trying to develop that baseline of trust and what that looks like between parents and guardians and their students and children. So I think that's another avenue of ways to look at that and not waiting until that threat's already been made.
And I think one other thing is that it just hit me when you were saying that on the devices, we have a lot of students that are posting stuff with weapons. And that is just like, what are you thinking? I mean, you send a picture with a gun in your hand and you're posting it, and then it's not even a threat that we're going to go to the school and do something. It's just like some the picture you used to take at before school or something. They're just posting it. I'm like, what are you doing? And so that becomes a big issue where the schools are going, this kid is posting with weapons, and the police are using those to say, hey, you're involved in criminal activity because you're posting with these weapons. So now the school is going, well, he's got a weapon, we don't want him here, so it's a vicious cycle in regards to the postings of things that we see every day. And like I said, like he was saying, it's just not school shootings, it's weapons, it's drugs, it's money, young ladies posting parts of their bodies, stuff like that. So gentlemen asking for the young ladies to send them these type of pictures, and just going back and forth that really needs to be watched by the parents, because if you don't watch it, the school will pick up on it and they will find it and they will try to maybe use that to remove your child from the school environment.
And one thing that when they are on social media and have posted with a gun, parents are not aware, but it opens the school. They have the right to search and seize That means they have the right to go to their lockers. They have the right to go to their desks, anywhere they are present, as well as getting an officer to go into and check their cars for weapons.
Yeah.
And parents will say, well, they violated our rights. No, when you go on social media and you pose a potential threat, that puts the school at risk if they did not go and search.
Correct. Very, very, very true. We have officers in the schools now. Every school seems to have a police officer in there, and they march those kids down, go through the lockers, go through their cars. You know, so-and-so said they had a Percocet, a Molly, some type of drug, and they're searching book bags and everything else.
But if there's search and seizure, the school law also says that the principals must contact the parent, and
Yes.
the parent have the right to be present. And we see that breakdown. I see heads shaking
That's
a
very,
lot.
that's
And
very,
that's a violation of that child's rights to have a police interrogating them without a parent present or legal rep.
definitely true. They should never be interrogated or asked any questions without the parents present at a minimum.
Yes.
Parents present.
Can't stop it, but they can have the right to be present.
Correct.
There's another component of this too, which it goes back to knowing what is in your student handbook,
Yes.
but the sharing of these posts also. So I
Ooh,
know
yes.
I've come from districts that even in the event that you weren't the child in the picture, but you shared it and didn't report it. And
Yes.
so the kids would always have, that's the snitching policy. Yep, we had the snitching policy. If you don't snitch, they got us with that all the time. But if you don't snitch, then you leave yourself open as well to a similar consequence.
Because you're disseminating the product. You're
Absolutely.
disseminating pictures.
Right.
And that that's a law. You cannot disseminate pornography, for lack of a better term. And I'm using the young lady who is not clothed. That's pornography, and the law says that you cannot disseminate that. Outside of a school policy, you could come into juvenile court for a delinquency matter.
Technology has really heightened all of this. As a school leader, there was a fight that children had videotaped at the mall. We get back to school,
yes.
and a child airdrops it. It goes to all of their contacts, and I'm one of their contacts.
Oh my.
Child was not engaged in it at all, but they videotaped it. And that child ended up at the table. They did not get expelled, but they did, have to, endure a consequence. So just parents being aware of the access and what students are doing, and training them also on how to use that social media appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that we have done with our NAACP. We've had a youth conference a few years back, and I think we probably need to review it on what you should be posting and what not to be posting. Because just looking at your posting for scholarship, if you are going to apply for college, they say they don't look at those postings for you to be admitted into college. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And when you check one, you need to check them all.
Why would I have that in there if I'm not going to look at it? I'm
right.
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 Why would I say that? Why would I say it if I'm not going to use it? That
Right.
makes no sense.
And we always said, if someone wants to, bring up in a scholarship meeting or something like, well, did you see their Facebook page? I said, if you check one, you got to check them all.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be surprised some of the things that you see.
Mm-hmm.
So, and these are, that's the cream of the crop. But yeah, the cream of the crop is holding the money, got a cigarette in the mouth and a Hennessy bottle right in his hand, so, we just need to just be aware, and tell our children about their postings, because people are looking at that, and they, if they their friend, they'll share it. Share that information, so that can harm them in the future. And also when you're looking for a job, your previous employer, will, search the the internet and find something on you. So I always tell them to watch their name on their social media page. They cannot have any profanity, name, or anything like it. I'll tell them that because that can hurt you. And whether you are a Caucasian student, Latino student, Asian student, any kind of student, Black student, I tell them that it can hurt you. So please watch your media. As far as the intent for, I want to go back to the fight that wasn't on school property. Make sure that I got some clarity there because I had a question a while back on that. If the fight didn't happen on school property, they can use that. It depends on what's in your policy. They can use that for an expulsion for you.
Mhm. If it results in an injury, staff injury.
Okay.
I mean, a student injury, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And it goes back to our whole concept of when does the parent take over from the school being, the parental person for her. So
Right.
Just for an example, I'm in the case now where the child shot another child, got off the bus, and they were still at the local gas station where you go in and get your snacks or whatever. And the buses left, but school's out at 3:00. They off the bus at 3:15, 3:20. He shoots them at 3:25. They kind of the schools was still kind of going on per se because no one had left the school. 10 kids get off the school bus and they go and hover around for a while. So that was still, kind of the continuation of the school. And a lot of the school policies I know are once you step into your house, the school situation is over now. Now it's on mom and dad if something happens. And then you go back out at 6 o'clock at night and have a fight, at the basketball court. That might be, they go to the same school, but it wasn't really about school. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a fact sensitive situation that you got to watch.
Mhm.
And to piggyback off that, I think it's important to also remember for schools that if they have those relationships with their law enforcement partners and that fight is broken up by the police, that you would hope that there is some level of communication there. Whether the school takes, the school may not take action, but I think it would be important to be aware of the fact that these two students who might be students together at the same school have had an issue, because you would hate to see that escalate at 8:30 in the morning the following day. And so I think that's where we really encourage, again, I think it keeps coming back to being, communication and relationships, right? And again, I think that's another one that's, separate from the parental involvement, but being able to have that dialogue back and forth and say, hey, it was a scuffle that had happened, nobody was arrested, nobody was charged, but you might want to keep an eye on this moving forward if you have that ability to do so.
And that's true. And that's the fear I think parents have, is that the school uses that fight to initiate an expulsion between Jimmy and Johnny. That was 8 o'clock at night on the basketball court, and it was about a foul and nothing else. So, and that's what the fear was when the schools are asking. Well, we want to know every time somebody has contact with the police, the kid. And it's like, well, why do you need to know all that? And if it wasn't school related or anything like that. And their argument was simply, we don't want it to escalate at the school. And you don't want it to, but you don't want to abuse the schools to abuse it and use it as a tool to go, Miss Smith don't like Johnny anyway, and he was fighting. So let's get Johnny out of here, So you got to be cognizant of it and your rights as parents of what can and cannot happen.
One of the other things that I would like parents to look at as we're talking about the knowing their disciplinary policies, students coming into schools have emotional issues, mental health issues, on psychiatric medicines, needing psychiatric medicine. One of the things, if we could get the word out to parents, if you know your child is struggling with a life circumstance, there is no shame in that game. Ask the school, do they have social workers who are mental health counselors? They're called school social workers, or other counselors, or have a contracted mental health provider with the school, because all schools are required to do that. To have their child sign, they have to make sure they're signed, because if they sign that they can see that child, because that is not a guidance counselor role, but that child, helping parents understand, don't wait till your child is in a crisis where they have to go to using these other means to deal with their problems, when they have support at the school to help them. And if they're a small school around the state and don't have that support, seek help out in the community for your child.
I think that is the biggest thing that needs to be addressed, and especially since these last 2 years of the pandemic.
Oh, yes.
I need counseling every single day, because I get so sick and tired of being in this house on this Zoom stuff. So, and I think I'm pretty well together. And now you think about a 15-year-old trying to navigate through life with puberty and this and that. And now they're stuck in the house with I can't stand my daddy because he always making me do something, but you still want me to go to school, and the school is on this computer. We really have to address mentally how this is affecting us, how it's affecting our children, and where do we go from here? And we need to destigmatize the issue of needing help. People need to talk to someone. Kids needing that help. Kids needing medication if it's necessary. And I'm not a proponent of medication because I think we kind of medicate our kids too much at times. And I see that, they just put them on this, put them on that, put them on this. And instead of trying to counsel them, talk to them, and trying to figure out where's the problem coming from. And I get that from a juvenile court standpoint, where you're dealing with kids that don't have parents. They're coming to the system, and mom is in a bad situation, and dad is incarcerated. So that's already issues you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Now you add on, I'm not doing well in school. I don't think this teacher likes me. I don't want to live at this foster home. So I think we need to really, really destigmatize the whole issue of mental health and get it out in the forefront and help our people, because it's tough. It's tough. And I would not want to be in it. And then what we were saying earlier with the social media, somebody's bullying me on social media. They're talking about me. I'm heavier than this other person, and I like Johnny, but she likes Johnny, and Johnny don't like me because I'm bigger than the other. It's a lot going on that you're absolutely right. We really need to get in there and work with our children in regards to mental health issues that need to be addressed.
We're seeing higher rates of depression among students, and we're seeing higher rates across the country of suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you usually see on television after a child has committed suicide, then people will say, oh, I saw that, but I didn't know it was going to lead to that. And that's holding the school accountable if they have resources to help with your child. That has to come from the parent side as well as the school helping identify a child that's in crisis before we get to a situation where they're handling it, or as you say, trying to handle it on their own.
You're absolutely correct, because we've got, parents that are concerned about having that stigma on their child, right?
Uh-huh.
But then that child who is just suffering internally
Yes.
gets in front of that first year teacher
Yes.
that is 22, 23, is probably suffering from their own trauma and
Mm-hmm.
has no idea how to manage the child. And then it blows up, and
Yes.
the parent says, well, they had a behavior specialist at the other school. Oh, okay. Well, we have to know that, because the school has got to know their audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that knowing your audience drives your development. But now what usually happens is that students that require more parenting are the ones that are getting all of the supports. And then they phase them out, right? When there's a child or children sitting in there that are genuinely suffering from things. And I'm so glad that you all mentioned just what our students have gone through sitting at home. My husband, is in domestic violence. And, you know, he talks a lot about what's happening to our children at home. And as long as we're virtual, those children are sitting there. If you can imagine having been abused the night before and have to stay in that same house and hear a math or science instruction, then yeah, when I get to school, I'm gonna cut up. I'm gonna cut up because I'm free. I don't know what else to do. So it's extremely important that parents are as transparent as they can be. But on the flip side, schools have got to be respectful and understanding of who they are servicing.
I have a question about the law enforcement in school. Some schools have police officers, some schools have security officers. So my question is, you know, is it up to the school system to have what kind of law enforcement they have in school, Mr. Balco?
That's correct. It's going to be up to each individual school corporation or charter school as to how they want to address that within their district.
And those officers are trained. I mean, they're supposed to be trained, right?
Trained as in?
Trained in how to handle de-escalate activities.
So the SRO certification is not required. The NASRO SRO certification is not required to work in a school district. It is encouraged. I think it adds some extra layers to that. However, there's costs associated with all that, and it's not required to be to work in a school, but it is recommended. But no, not every law enforcement officer is not a trained SRO, if that makes sense.
So they can have untrained SROs in the school system.
They could have a trained law enforcement officer who is not a trained SRO. So a school resource officer in Indiana statute has a definition to get that SRO training. So it's sort of that, you know, all SROs are police officers, but not all police officers are
SROs.
I think sometimes it's used sometimes I think it's used interchangeably, that any police officer in a school is subsequently called an SRO, but SRO is defined in state statute. So it gets a little tricky to navigate at times.
Okay. Barbara, Sadie, do you guys have any questions, or are there any questions in the chat, in the Facebook chat, John?
Hi, this is Sadie. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Good morning. I am so happy and so amazed at the information that's actually you all are providing here. I am the diversity and inclusion coordinator for Tippecanoe School Corporation. And it's been really tough this last year and a half. Our parents are really struggling with students, with the fighting and whatnot. But a lot of this, as a couple of you have already said, some of that starts in the home and they bring it over to the school. So however, with the parents that have dealt with it for such a long time, what I am doing there is bringing parents in as they have these issues to try to address with them so that our students can see that we're talking to parents as well. When kids get to school, they sharing with me, this problem happened, I don't know how to address it. A kid a few weeks ago came in and said that one of her friends reported that she had gotten raped. She was afraid to tell her mom, she's afraid to tell the dad, but however, just later after that, she was talking about it into the school setting. So it got a little difficult at that moment. So she ended up, whoever she was sharing it with, forwarded it back to someone else. So we had to have that conversation. The teachers before me and the staff before me was having a conversation with her, and she just said, I don't know who to talk to. I do not know who to tell. However, if I had to talk to her, I don't know, if you are at home, when you get this information, you need to go to your mother or your parent so that they can get with the school system, because at that time we are not aware what happens and we don't know, but we have law enforcement that will get involved right away. But the thing about it is when parents tell kids, don't tell, don't say anything, at least share with them, come talk to me. We want kids to know that they have us, they can trust us, and building that trust. Parents sometimes shows up at my office all upset about something that happened 5 years, 6 years ago. But kids see that. And when kids share that, we want to make sure kids bring that to the table, whether it be via email or text or something, so that we can get to whatever the problem has been. That has worked here. I got students who actually have failing, and we talk about what they want to be and where their focus should be. If we can get our parents to be more comfortable and trust us because of something that I didn't do, not know about last year or whatever, maybe we can get a new beginning on some of the problems that we're having. But with the fighting and everything, and they're setting up fights at the bus stop, this should not be happening. So now I am getting up in the morning and I'm at the bus stop talking to parents. You find parents that are actually egging on the fight. That's not okay. So we need to be mindful.
Right.
Doesn't matter what color you are. You need to be responsible and you need to be able to be in control of your child. And if there's problems at that bus stop, if there are problems at home, we need to be addressing that we are a team of people. So that's what I like to see us do more. Having to been a former probation officer, I'm gonna call it like I said. I said parents, I put parents in timeout too. But that doesn't make any sense. We need to be mindful. We need to call it like it is, because if we don't, we're gonna lose the kids that are lawyers. We have African-American students that can be so smart, but however with that, and then I plan a group, I go once a week to my schools, have a group of 21 students. This week I had 41 students that are wanting to come to talk about how we can empower ourselves. So that's been working for us, but I want parents to understand we're doing it with parents as well. But if we don't say something, we don't do something and tell parents, you're not right, you need to support your child, we're going to continue to get what we're getting. So certainly I'm glad to hear this, and thank you, Deborah, for arranging this, because we need more of this. We need more people at the table, because we have our young folk that can be so very successful. So thank you all for this.
And Mrs. Scott, I want to piggyback on what you said. We have parents coming in the school telling their kids, yes, if he hits you,
Yes.
beat him up, beat her up. And
Yes.
then they're upset when law enforcement and the principal have to do something, because the parent has to come in the school, present what the problem is, but be on the team with the school and not coming in using your cell phone for your kid to call you and tell you about a disciplinary issue, and you're coming in saying beat up everybody and I'm giving my child permission. You have just given your child permission to be out of school. And so I thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, that is the case. Some people, some parents will go to this, I have seen parents go to the school, cuss the teacher out, and I'm saying that you can't do that. You need to go to the table and talk about the issue. Yeah. And I know you might think Johnny is an excellent, student or excellent little boy at home. But when he gets to school, he's a little terror, So, we got to know our children.
That's right.
We really do need to know our children. And a kid will lie in a minute.
They will.
So, and I always say there's three sides to the story: yours, theirs, and the truth.
That's
so
right.
therefore, let's sit down and talk.
Right. And then the other thing is, kids not supposed to be on their cell phone. You're doing math. I'm on my phone. Who you talking to? You get them to the office. Guess who they talking to? Mom. Mom coming up to school want to fight because the kid was talking to her. I want to give you 2 or 3 seconds to think about this because we're going to go in my office. That is not acceptable. But I had a parent who did that. She's been always doing that. But what I did was had her to think about that. And we're going to go right back to that school because Johnny is looking at you act like this. That is not acceptable. Right. You know, it turned around. The kid realized your phone can be in my office, drop it off on the way to school. Mom didn't want to do that. But we have to tell them. But once you tell them that, and you get them where you don't have these problems. Johnny is now a student. We're not gonna play with Johnny. I want Johnny to be in college. Johnny needs to know you have rules, you have to follow rules. So Mom, I'm sorry, you gotta get Mom admitted. I was overwhelmed. Yeah, you are. But we need to make Johnny continue to be successful. Johnny not gonna come in here cursing at Ms. Harper Scott. We need to call it like it is.
And that brings, go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry, man. I think the one thing that is missing is it was a team aspect of your parent and the teacher and you. And I'll be honest with you, me growing up, I thought I was right every time that I got in trouble. And somehow my mother was always on the teacher side. And I was like, what? I didn't do that, and I did it, obviously, because I was in trouble. But it was a team aspect. Your parent and the teacher and administration were working together to get you educated, the student. That was their goal. Now it seems, when they come to court and you see it, it's always, this teacher don't like my son. And this, and it's like, why would she got 40 kids. Why she don't like your son? Have you ever asked that question? Why is your son the one she don't like? But the other 39 students she all right with, So I think we really need to focus on that and come up with those, like, why are we not a team working for the common goal, like Ms. Scott said, of getting your child to college, getting your child a career, whatever that is, and, somehow we've lost that aspect of it.
And one thing that all of us in education, piggybacking on this subject, is parents are always shocked when their kid has called them on the iPhone and said that an incident happened, and they come in and they use a direct threat to the administration. There is what they call, there's a law called no trespass. That involves a contract with the superintendent and the chief of police signing. They will put a parent off grounds for a semester or a school year based on the direct offense. The staff has to write up the incident, and if the police read that incident and see that there is enough information, they issue that no trespass order. That no trespass is issued, and you are not allowed to enter the school grounds even if your child had an emergency, or you will not subject, you will be arrested. So we always say to them, you can be upset and angry, but please come in, and you can't use threatening language or thinking you're going to bring a weapon and that kind of thing. Now, just a parent cursing a staff out, that's not a direct threat. But if they're threatening to do direct harm to that person, that's a whole different ballgame. And that's very important.
And the other thing, I like to be able, kids are saying that teacher don't like me. Yeah, you just misbehaved. It's not that they don't like you. Understand, we don't like your behaviors. Your behavior, there's a difference in don't like the teacher or the parent or the behaviors. We don't like your behavior. We love you. We care for you. But your behaviors has to change. And parents get upset because they think the teacher doesn't. That's not it. That is not it. And we as African Americans, depression, there are times that we don't want to accept that. If we are depressed, if we are overwhelmed, they don't want to accept. They don't even want to hear it. And I see kids that are struggling. I'm not one for medication, but if I need something to get that kid over the hump, I would rather see that in place and wean the kid off of that rather than to have them continuing to struggle. That is so very important. So we're talking about getting to know your teacher, getting to know who you are, because we see it. If you look at Wednesday in the week, Wednesday and Thursday are the times that the kids begin to get a little rowdy, they get upset, you have the behaviors. Because we're moving into Friday. Friday, they leave Saturday and Sunday, they're home with nothing to eat. They're home with no discipline. They're home where they can do anything they want to do. When we get them back on Monday, they just trying to get back into the school. I shared that with some parents and they're like, wow, I didn't even really think about it like that. You're fighting at home over the weekend. We don't do that at school. But it hangs on to the child. We need to understand how we as a parents can either help our children or we hurt our children.
Mhm.
That's that we need to be.
I agree.
Things.
I agree. Before I turn this back over to Mrs. Vance, I want to just say again to all of the expert presenters, I thank you for representing NAACP, our education committee. Just really thank you for bringing your knowledge, willing to give us your time and your expertise on what all of our goals are, and that is to try to prevent a problem before it starts. But once something does happen, what avenues we have to go through. And I just want to thank you.
I too would like to thank you. Barbara, do you have any comments?
She's on mute.
She is on mute. She probably, there's another conference, another workshop going on. So she's probably in that workshop. She's got 3 devices. There you are, Miss Barbara.
And yes, I am. And I've been listening to you. And I've been doing 1,000 other things. This has been an amazing panel. I thank you, all of the panelists. I thank you, Deborah Vance and Cynthia Evans, for all of your hard work. But it was outstanding information, and I thank you very much. So I hope that the people who had an opportunity to tune in really got something out of it.
I do too.
I do have a YouTube question, and the questions are both law enforcement officers and SROs trained in dealing with mental health in children from in children? And this is from Webster, Ramon Webster.
Well, I just what I see from the courts, we're not trained enough in mental health. I don't, police, SRO, courts, schools, it's an issue that really needs, I don't feel comfortable in regards to being trained enough to understand what should I do to de-escalate things. I try to use it in court and calm people down and don't have bailiffs jumping on people and taking them to the ground and stuff like that. But it's something that we really need to have better understanding of how to de-escalate situations. And I think we're getting into that realm of, okay, everything isn't needs to be physical. We need to understand that people come to the table with different mental issues that need to be that we need to try to address on the front end, so we don't have to de-escalate a lot of things in the school settings and in courtrooms and stuff like that.
And I don't think that I would be able to adequately answer who's trained on what based on various law enforcement agencies around the state and what their sort of training recommendations and policies are for that. I know that part of the SRO training does include some of that, but as far as other additional trainings that are offered to law enforcement communities, I'm not sure I'd feel great answering that with any level of detail right now. So
thank you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it is the school responsibility to notify an officer if they are interfacing with the student, if that student has an IEP, and if that student has a diagnosis that's been diagnosed, so that that officer doesn't think that that student is just operating on its own behavior, if I can say that word. And so that is where school administration must step in and say, this child is autistic, this child has psychiatric disorders or has been diagnosed. Sometimes schizophrenic, and that is not, they're not in control of their behavior, and not just have the officer involved and not know.
I think the only thing I would add is that with any officer, it's just parents need to know that they have two jobs: to de-escalate and remove the threat.
Mhm.
And so it's not just, even though the behavior is coming from that one individual, the officer, be it school resource officer, be it and just an officer in general, they are, yes, attending to that particular student, but through a lens of de-escalating and removing the threat from the entire situation.
Mhm.
So often to a parent, when an officer or even school administrator is attending to that child, let's say, who is autistic, and well, why are you moving them? Why? They're not the ones, because they have to de-escalate the threat to the entire environment.
That's
And that
true.
is not always clear
Mhm.
in what it looks like. And then I'll always say what my police officers have always said to me is, school leaders, once you pass it to an officer,
Mhm. Can't
and
get it back.
you can't get it back.
There you go.
I can make one announcement before you
Yeah.
go. I wanted to let all of the delegates who are listening, in whatever method they're using, that ballots have been sent to your devices, your emails, addresses on file with National. So you'll have until 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central to vote. Thank you. That's all I have. And I am signing out. Again, great job, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, is there any more questions in the YouTube or the Facebook chat? And could you put my contact information out there? It's just my name and my email.
I can do that.
Okay,
No, there are not any other questions.
Okay.
Thanks.
All righty. And well, I think you guys, I really do appreciate this, because it is a lot of information that I did not know. And I thought I knew a little bit, but it was a majority of it I did not know. And I really do appreciate you educating me on this issue. And I hope the delegates and the observers and even our audience have some takeaway with this in our school systems on how they can advocate for their child, because our children are our future. I really would like to see more doctors, lawyers, because, my generation is getting old, and, they're not going to be as sharp as they're going to be, so I need somebody to, to kind of pick up the torch, so when I do get sick, the monitoring medicine to give me, so I just want to put that out there to let you guys know, we need our children. We need our children educated. They are our future. We need them to join NAACP. We need them to join other civil rights organizations. We need them to be productive citizens. I'd rather see them make an honest living than be behind bars. And, so that's what I would like for our children to do. And parents, I know parents want their children to be everything, that in a bag of chips. However, we got to make sure that we discipline our children, or make sure that they're on the right track, give them good advice. If you don't know the advice or don't know something, ask someone.
Yes.
Ask someone, especially
Yes.
in the time of Zoom, bullying, mental health. Seek help. It's okay to ask for help. So thank you all. I really do appreciate it. And we'll probably be having a summit, and I might call on you next year. Who knows? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Mhm.